I'm Owen Miller, 34 years old, and I live in Maple Creek, Ohio. My life has always been pretty straightforward, a steady rhythm of working hard and enjoying the quiet comfort of my home. I work as an automotive technician, which means precision, knowing where every tool is and having a systematic approach to things. My garage is a model of organization, everything in its place, labeled and ready. That same sense of order, I always hoped, would extend into my home life with my partner, Sarah. We've been together for years, building a life, a cozy little house in Maple Creek that I cherish. It's my sanctuary after a long day of grease and gears, a place where I can relax and recharge. Sarah is an amazing person in so many ways, kind, thoughtful, and full of life, but she has this one habit, this peculiar way of organizing that has driven me absolutely to the brink of madness. Our work schedules are completely different. I'm up at dawn, she works later into the day and often has evenings free. This means that while I'm out wrestling with engines, she's often home doing her thing, and her thing often involves what she calls tidying up or rearranging to make things more efficient. But what it really feels like to me is that she's playing a never-ending game of hide-and-seek with my belongings, and sometimes with our shared household items. I'd come home tired, wanting to just grab something simple like my wallet or the television remote, and it would be gone. Not just moved, but gone. I'd search, growing more frustrated by the minute, eventually having to call her at work, interrupting her day to ask, "Hey, where did you put my car keys? I can't find them anywhere." And her answer was always some variation of, "Oh, I was just organizing, so I put them under the stack of magazines on the coffee table, or there behind the potted plant in the living room." I would always point out that under and behind are keywords that prove it's not just organized, it's hidden, and how am I supposed to know she moved them there without her telling me? She'd always respond, completely earnest, that where she moves things makes sense. But most of the time, to me, it absolutely did not make sense. My patience, which in my line of work is usually as strong as tempered steel, was slowly beginning to fray. It wasn't just about misplacing items. It felt like a constant, subtle disrespect for my routine, for my need to just know where my own things were. It made my home, my sanctuary, feel less like a place of calm and more like a never-ending scavenger hunt. I tried to solve the problem, believe me, I really did. At first, I tried to be lighthearted about it. "Sarah," I'd say with a chuckle, "are you training me for a spy mission? Because I swear, finding my socks is harder than disarming a bomb." She'd laugh along, promise to be better, but the next day, my favorite coffee mug would be nestled in the back of the pantry next to the rarely used holiday dishes. Then I moved on to more serious talks. I sat her down one evening, explaining calmly how it affected my day, how having to search for my work badge for 10 minutes made me late, how missing an important wrench for a weekend project wasted precious time. I even suggested we could try a system, maybe a designated holding zone for anything moved or a quick text message if she rearranged something important. She listened, nodded, and always seemed genuinely sorry, promising to change. She even suggested once that she write down where she put things, but that lasted about 2 days before the notes became cryptic or disappeared themselves. I tried to understand her logic truly. I'd stand there, staring at a now empty spot where my multi-tool always sat, trying to think, if I were Sarah, where would make sense to put this? Usually I'd end up in a completely different room, searching a drawer I hadn't opened in months, only to find the multi-tool was right back where it belonged, but underneath a pile of old newspapers she had decided needed filing. The problem wasn't getting better, it was getting worse. The misplaced items grew in number and importance. My spare set of car keys, my wallet, the paperwork for my upcoming car registration, even the remote for the garage door opener, all were subjected to her organizational genius. One particularly bad morning stands out vividly in my mind. I had a really important client coming in, a rare, vintage Mustang that needed delicate work. I had meticulously prepared everything the night before. I needed my specialized set of torque wrenches, the precise ones I used only for these delicate jobs. I remembered putting them in their usual spot in my tool chest in the garage. But that morning they were gone. I searched the garage, growing increasingly frantic. I knew I couldn't work on that car without those specific wrenches. I called Sarah, my voice tight with stress. "Sarah, please tell me you didn't organize my torque wrenches. I need them right now." There was a pause, then her sheepish voice. "Oh honey, yes, they were taking up so much space in the garage, and I thought they looked a little dirty, so I put them in a box with some other metal things to be cleaned later, and I put the box under the utility sink in the basement. It just made sense to keep all the metal things together." My jaw clenched. Under the utility sink, in a box marked for cleaning, those weren't just metal things, they were expensive, precision instruments. I had to tell the client I couldn't start on their Mustang that day, rescheduling and looking utterly unprofessional. The client was understanding, but I felt like a complete idiot. The cost of missing that day's work, plus the potential damage to my reputation, weighed heavily on me. I spent the rest of the day in a dark mood, feeling disrespected and deeply frustrated. The house, which was supposed to be a refuge, felt like a constant source of anxiety. I started to question if Sarah even heard me, or if she simply didn't care about the chaos her organizing created in my life. It felt like she was living in her own world, completely oblivious to the real impact of her actions. I was exhausted from the constant searching, the mild panic attacks every morning, the feeling that I was losing control over my own home, my own things. I was at my lowest, feeling helpless against this peculiar habit of hers, certain that nothing I said or did would ever change things. Then came the final straw, the breaking point that pushed me over the edge. It wasn't about work this time, but something deeply personal, a small joy that had been stolen. I'm a big fan of old arcade games, and I'd finally saved up for a vintage handheld console, a relic from my childhood, something I cherished. I had a few precious hours of downtime coming up, and I was looking forward to replaying some of those classic games. I put it carefully on my bedside table, ready for a quiet evening. When I got home after a particularly rough day at the garage, it was gone. I searched my nightstand, the dresser, under the bed. Nothing. A cold dread settled in my stomach. I called Sarah. "Hey, did you see my handheld game console, the old gray one?" "Oh," she chirped. "Yes. It looks so out of place on your nightstand. I mean, it's a game, right? So I put it with all the other games. It's in the linen closet on the top shelf behind the extra towels. It just made sense to keep all the games together in the entertainment section." The linen closet, that was the exact opposite of where it should be. My patience finally snapped. This wasn't just organizing anymore. It was an active obstruction of my life, my simple pleasures. That's when the idea for revenge, a sweet, poetic kind of revenge, solidified in my mind. I was going to organize her world. I would use her own logic against her and make her understand exactly how I felt. My plan was simple but devastating, built entirely on her own flawed reasoning. First, I went to her sock drawer. She had this specific, very comfortable pair of fuzzy blue socks she loved to wear around the house, practically lived in them. I took them out. Then I found an old, slightly worn pair of my own work socks, ones that probably smelled faintly of motor oil, and put them right in the middle of her sock drawer. The fuzzy blue ones, I neatly folded them and placed them in the junk drawer in the kitchen. It made sense to me. Socks are fabric, and fabric can be used for cleaning up messes, so they belong with other odds and ends in the utility drawer. Next, her favorite book, a historical novel she was halfway through. She always kept it on her bedside table. I took it, then went into the garage, found one of my auto repair manuals, and placed it on her nightstand. The novel, I carefully placed it, spine out, in the pantry right next to the cookbooks. It made sense because books are for reading and cookbooks are also books, so they belong together, right? I didn't stop there. Her favorite hairbrush, the expensive one she used every day, was moved to the bathroom cabinet, but not in her usual spot. I tucked it away in the very back, behind a forgotten bottle of mouthwash and a half-empty tube of sunscreen. And in its place, a toothbrush from the guest bathroom, a completely unused one. It made sense because they are both personal grooming items, therefore they belong in the same general area, just not necessarily in the same exact spot. The final touch was her laptop, which she usually kept on the living room coffee table. I took it and with meticulous care, placed it in the garden shed, tucked away on a shelf with the seed packets and gardening gloves. My reasoning: a laptop is a tool, just like gardening tools are tools, and tools belong in the shed. It made perfect sense to me. I waited. I didn't have to wait long. A few hours later, I was in my home office trying to focus on some paperwork when I heard a frustrated sigh from the bedroom, followed by a muffled exclamation. Then another, louder one from the kitchen. Finally, a frantic, "Owen, have you seen my fuzzy socks? I can't find them anywhere." I stayed silent. Then a few minutes later, "Owen, where is my book? And what is this disgusting wrench manual doing on my nightstand?" Her voice was rising, a blend of confusion and annoyance. I kept working. Then the calls started. "Owen, I can't find my hairbrush. And my laptop is gone. Owen, where is my laptop? I need to finish that report." She called my cell phone from the house phone, then from her tablet. I let the calls ring for a bit, enjoying the sweet symphony of her growing frustration. Finally, I answered. "Yes, dear," I asked, trying to sound innocent. "My socks are gone, my book is gone, my hairbrush is gone, and my laptop, it's gone," she practically wailed. "Where are they? Did you move them? What did you do?" "Oh," I said, my voice calm, "I was just organizing. Your fuzzy socks were taking up too much space in your drawer, so I put them in the junk drawer in the kitchen. They're fabric, and fabric can be useful for odd jobs, so it just made sense. Your books belong with other books, so it's in the pantry with the cookbooks. Your hairbrush, it's in the bathroom cabinet behind the sunscreen because personal care items belong together. And your laptop. Well, a laptop is a tool, dear, just like the gardening tools, so I put it in the shed with the gardening supplies. It all makes perfect sense, doesn't it?" There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. Then a small, barely audible laugh, followed by a long, drawn-out sigh. "Owen Miller," she said, her voice a mix of exasperation and grudging admiration. "You are absolutely infuriating. But I think I get it. I really, really get it now." The impact of my carefully constructed revenge was exactly what I had hoped for. It wasn't a childish tantrum. It was a mirror, held up to show her the reflection of her own actions. She spent the rest of the evening, not angry, but methodically searching for her things, experiencing firsthand the exact frustration I had lived with for months. She came to me later that night, after finally retrieving her laptop from the shed, looking genuinely contrite. "Owen," she said, sitting next to me on the couch, "I am so incredibly sorry. I never, ever realized how truly frustrating and disrespectful it felt. It's like my brain just compartmentalizes things differently, and I genuinely thought I was helping, but I was just making your life a constant puzzle. You really got your point across. It wasn't cute, Owen, it was maddening. And that was it. The revenge wasn't about winning, it was about mutual understanding." The next day, we sat down together. We cleared out a specific drawer in the kitchen for temporary holding of anything that needed to be moved. We bought a small whiteboard for the fridge where we could jot down if something important had been relocated, along with its new spot. It wasn't perfect overnight, but there was a noticeable, immediate change. Sarah started asking before she moved things. She'd say, "Hey, I'm thinking of moving the spare batteries to the utility closet. Is that okay?" And I'd finally feel like my input, my need for order, was being respected. My home became my sanctuary again, a place of peace and predictability. The constant anxiety of searching for my belongings vanished, replaced by a quiet confidence that my partner heard me, saw me, and respected my need for order. Weeks turned into months, and our new system worked beautifully. The temporary holding drawer occasionally had a misplaced item, but it was always something minor and easily found. The whiteboard was used consistently. Our communication had improved not just about misplaced items, but in other areas of our relationship too. I felt truly fulfilled, knowing that I had stood up for myself, and in doing so had actually strengthened our bond. One lazy Saturday morning, I was searching for my old fishing hat, the one I'd had since I was a teenager. I knew I hadn't worn it in a while, and it wasn't in its usual spot on the coat rack. I sighed, almost falling back into old habits of dreading the search, but then I remembered our system. I checked the whiteboard, nothing. Then a thought struck me. I walked to the small storage area we had recently reorganized, a spot where we kept seasonal items. Tucked neatly on a shelf beneath a stack of my winter sweaters was my fishing hat. Sarah had moved it, probably during one of her recent tidying sessions, and she had placed it with other seasonal items, where it technically made perfect sense for a summer hat to be stored for the off-season. She hadn't put it on the whiteboard because it wasn't an active use item. I looked at it, then at the label on the shelf, perfectly aligned. And for the first time I chuckled, a genuine, joyful sound, not out of frustration, but out of amusement and a strange sense of satisfaction. It seemed she hadn't just learned to respect my need for order. She had also, perhaps, taught me a little something about her own peculiar, yet sometimes undeniably logical, way of organizing. Maybe, just maybe, some things did make sense in their own unique way, if I just knew where to look.